it sucks because I've done so many interviews and people are like, Ukraine's going to win, right? And I'm like, oh, kiddo.
Yeah, I know.
It's really hard to know how this is going to go. But again, Ukraine's doing very well. He has to at the same point put out hey, we're winning this thing, we're doing really well, keep sending us money, it's not a lost cause, whilst at the same time we are being attacked by the big bad bear, you need to come save us. And trying to walk that line for Ukrainian social media is really difficult at the moment.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hey, absolutely fantastic to be here, and yes, it's all a conspiracy just to get ratings for us. It's funny, we did a piece on Venezuela years ago, and we put this in the piece, being like, what happens if there's a Florida-based company that pays some PMCs to try and overthrow the government with mining, with oil money? We released that piece on the Monday, and on Thursday it actually happened, dead on what we suggested.
Wow.
To which my inbox then filled with, did you know something we didn't? And there's been a few times where I've been called a few things right, which again, I would love to do DraftKings betting, but I think that'd be weird to be like, the following people are gonna die. Here's $20.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels a little distasteful, but yeah, it's welcome to geopolitics. It's like watching a very slow moving car crash.
And then all of a sudden have ads for Foster's, and you're just like, yes, it all ties in together. The craziest thing is how long ago was that when you were on Mind Dog? Because you did talk about everything that was going on over in Ukraine, what everybody else, I guess, could plainly see aside from them. And then like a few weeks later, it fucking happened.
Yeah, except we were all kind of sitting there going, look, it's a possibility it happens, but he would have to be really stupid to go in. And then we were kind of, we saw the build up. We were waiting for lots of little things like the canceling of officers' leave passes and the, effectively the shipping in of fresh blood and, the requisitioning of civilian trains. So the canceling of train routes, particularly around Volgograd in the south. And we're like, okay, that hasn't happened yet. And then the Monday before it happened, all of those tick boxes ticked. And I went, oh, shit.
Right. Yeah, so, it was kind of crazy. I have a friend who's a comic out in L.A., but she's from the Ukraine. Her family's from the Ukraine. And again, the same feeling that I was trying to talk to her about it, everything. And they did not think, they thought it was kind of crazy. And I don't know if it's more because, I don't know what your take on it is, if it's more because they live under that kind of threat constantly anyway, so it's just par for the course if you're there. And they were like, yeah, I know. It's almost, I felt like equating it to the fault line in California, where they're like, yeah, they fucking say it every year that there's going to be a thing, and then when it finally happens, everyone on the outside is like, we told you. Do you think it's that kind of a thing?
That's a pretty good metaphor, but it's also just the, Putin's been pretty good at thinking out strategy, doing a cost versus risk reward analysis and going, this is worth, this much damage to the country, but I get this out of it. But with this, it's, we start talking about end games and none of the end games make any sense. If he annexes Ukraine, then he's got to effectively deploy 60 to 70% of his troops just to police the damn thing. Yeah. If he balkanizes it into 7 nations, then again, that's what stops those guys turning against him because they're not particularly happy with him. Right. If he splits the country in half, what stops the other half joining NATO? There is every single end game here just doesn't make sense. And that's why even when at the last moment we're going, oh, look, all the signs say yes, but why would he do this? And that's, it's a very complicated situation.
That's the one thing I notice people talking about constantly. And he's obviously bluffing when he says this is all going part of the plan, which I don't even know why you would even say that. Like, I mean, how much face could you possibly save at this point when you obviously clearly thought it was going to be a lot easier to take over than it's been for him?
He very much thought, from what we can understand, again, it's very hard because it's just Putin is right now very insulated. Even the fact that he got called out for being so insulated the other day. So he released a bunch of videos of, here is me with school children, and whoever the video editor is didn't, green screen it properly. So his hand is going through the mic.
Right, exactly.
Then everyone went, There he is.
Yep.
To which Zelensky just decided to end his press conference the next day by moving the mic just to prove he was there, which I thought was a little bit on the nose. Yeah, it's
pretty great.
So it's very weird to pick exactly what his thought process is, but it's, when we look at the sort of Russian plans in Georgia, it was precision strikes. It was, send the tanks in hard, send them in fast, run through the areas, and Georgia surrendered really quickly. And they went, no, we're not going to win this one. Have what you want. And I think Russia was probably expecting the Ukrainians to roll over a lot quicker. But, that's probably because Putin hasn't spent any time in Ukraine. And those women can hit a man with a pickle jar at 100 paces. They're very, very good. In Ukraine, there are only a few people who have damaged my liver more than myself over the years, and they have mostly all been Ukrainians. So if you're going to invade any country, I think Ukraine is probably one of the most difficult ones you're going to go for.
What's the feeling surrounding Zelensky? Like, I mean, obviously I know what it is now, but I mean, when he came in, became the president, knowing what he was beforehand, did anybody see him kind of taking this much of a leadership role?
It's very weird because we've had this in Ukraine ever since the sort of breakup of the Soviet Union, this kind of a Russian-leaning administration, a Western-leaning administration, a Russia-leaning, and it's always one of the two. It's never, anyone neutral. And effectively what's really weird is, if people don't know, he was a comedian before this.
Yeah.
He was the star of a show called Servant of the People, Servant of the Nation, depending on your language. And effectively in that show, he's a teacher who goes on a rant and says the government's corrupt, everything's terrible. And he wins the presidency because the Russian and the European candidate split the vote, and he goes to the middle and wins. Yeah. Which is kind of exactly what happened later on when he ran for president.
So crazy.
Which is, again, super weird. But again, he kind of got a grade Ukrainian corruption on a bit of a sliding scale. It's by Western standards, his administration's got some question marks. But by Ukrainian standards, he's actually run a really good administration.
Right.
He's not, the bits he hasn't done great on, the bits he has done great on, but that's with every president. There's always going to be pros and cons. But generally, he's been a pretty well-respected, well-liked president, and he's been particularly good with messaging. Most Ukrainian presidents are, old, chubby men who sit in their mansion all day, where he's been very active out in the community doing stuff. Yeah. Obviously, since this conflict started, he has been amazing at his messaging. And that's the whole point. He's an actor. He knows how social media works. He's young. He's 44, which again makes me start to have a bit of a midlife crisis coming up.
I know. It is kind of crazy. Yeah, he's considerably a young dude.
He is young, but that's the thing, is now he knows how to message. He knows things like the fact that when Putin says, he's run off to Poland, that it was very important for him to stand with his prime minister and his chief of staff and his defense minister in front of the Rada, which is their kind of Congress. Very important to get those messages out quickly. And he's been very good with that. So above and beyond what anyone expected Zelensky to be doing, but kudos to him. He's in a very, very tough situation at the moment.
He really is. And one of the most bizarre, I think, headlines that I saw about all this stuff when he was, going out with his men and stuff like that, and seen in the gear and everything, was Ukrainian voice of Paddington Bear joins that. And I was just like, what an interesting what an interesting credit to give him. But I was I was also like, wow, Paddington, I love Paddington Bear. That's pretty great.
Yep. It's like people who introduced Obama as Michelle's husband. It's just like, you're not wrong. You just, it's weird way to say that, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, like the framing there, guys. But also, I don't know, that was supposed to diminish. But I was like, I love Paddington Bear, so fuck you guys. I don't know what you're talking about. That's pretty great.
Look, he's Paddington bearing arms. That's what he's at the moment. He's been really on the ball. So is the mayor of Kiev has been on roofs with machine guns. We've seen a lot of the defense minister out and about. It is pretty impressive for what we'd expect out of a politician.
What do you make of the whole? I mean, it's obviously great to have social media during this time, because that's how we get a lot of the information that we have. But it is kind of a weird way to absorb everything, because I feel like, younger people didn't know this was happening anywhere else. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, it's kind of par for the course. You know what I mean? Something similar to this has happened several times before, but because of the advent of social media, hasn't been absorbed in the same way. Are you guys having like a weird kind of time dealing with the two?
So it's a double-edged sword because you're getting, footage from the front line straight out of the bat, stuff that 30 years ago you would have to, try and convince guys with, spies to get in there and get you this information, and it's just being streamed on TikTok. Fantastic. But it also means the amount of disinformation is now just a fire hose. And again, there's both sides putting disinformation out. Both sides are exaggerating their gains, and it's a lot of, you'll get people saying, "Oh, look, the Ukrainians have knocked out an entire Russian division," and it's footage of like a militia group out in Donbass that was probably shot in the first days.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people who don't know what they're looking at. They assume, "Oh, these are crack Russian soldiers," and it's guys who are still wearing World War II helmets, and they're kind of all ragtag. A lot of these kind of victorious footage coming out is from one front, which again, there's 5 fronts here, and 2 of them are doing well. 3 of them are, doing really badly for the Ukrainians. So it's very difficult. We're not seeing social media pick up the Russian victories.
Right.
We're seeing them pick up all the Ukrainian ones. So it's very, it sucks because I've done so many interviews and people are like, Ukraine's going to win, right? And I'm like, oh, kiddo.
Yeah, I know.
It's really hard to know how this is going to go. But again, Ukraine's doing very well. He has to, at the same point, put out hey, we're winning this thing. We're doing really well. Keep sending us money. It's not a lost cause. Yeah. Whilst at the same time, we are being attacked by the big bad bear. You need to come save us. Right. And trying to walk that line for Ukrainian social media is really difficult at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously have you seen the account Ghost of Kyiv?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the ones that I was like, no one can confirm it, but also I guess morale wise, that's a great, but you know what I mean? Like I understand
some of the footage came from a video game, which was a bit like,
I know it is kind of crazy.
It's great for morale.
Exactly. Where you're like, I can't blame them. You know what I mean? You're trying to raise people's spirits and stuff like that. It's not a terrible way to go about it, but information wise, it's got to be hard to combat.
Very much so. And again, there's so much Russian disinformation on this as well. We've seen everything, like the big rumor going around sort of VK, which is Russian Facebook, I guess, and all these sort of social media things, is that Ukraine forgot to sign the contract stating their borders in 1991. So technically this is fine.
Right.
Is the weirdest technicality I've seen for a conflict.
Yeah.
They're like bringing these tiny children who are like 6, and they're like, "What is a special military operation?" It's like, well, it means it's weird over there.
Right.
But yeah, it's obviously, and also the fact that we're seeing, the Ukrainians are really good at their messaging because they do a lot in English, and they know that's where the target audience that sends the money is.
Right.
Whereas all the Russian stuff is all in Russian, which means you're only going to get hardcore analysts like me, so boring, chubby white guys who are going to look and they go, "Well, frankly, that's a T-44 tank. That's a T-72 tank, mate. He's probably coming in from the 48th division. Look at that bloody or guys who you're not going to convince anyway." Or you're getting people who are hardcore. I don't know what the word for a Russian weeaboo is, but something down that line.
Yeah, obviously nobody wants to get into nobody wants to get into a conflict with Russia. But I mean, how much do you think they're going to be able to push it? Before
not much at all, and there's so much panic around it because, well, let's play out the actual scenario that we're sitting with State Department, because I'm working quite closely with those guys at the moment. Is the Polish are saying, we're saying, hey, look, let's send 1,000 men over the border and help these refugees get across, check their visas over there, get everything sorted, we can even help secure them, and people go, that's a great idea. And then someone, some pessimistic person in the room, who quite often is me, will go, okay, what happens when one dumb Russian corporal accidentally fires a mortar shell and misses, or one helicopter pilot strafes and kills 3 Polish soldiers? What is Poland's response? And they go, well, we would probably hit the airbase that came from. I go, okay, so you're killing Russian soldiers. What is the Russian response? And then you play that game and go, oh yeah, this is nuclear war real quick.
Right.
So you don't even want to get anywhere near it, because it is such a, because Russia is cornered at the moment and they can't afford to lose face, it's a really tough situation of, well, is it worth risking nuclear war for? There are some things, there are some things we do. So for instance, there's been lots of ops to, like the German, spy master effectively was caught in Kiev when this whole thing started. So we sent Black Hawks out to go get him and bring him back, which again, that risk calculation was, okay, we don't think that's going to start World War III. Sending troops in, that might start World War III. Setting civilian volunteers in, that probably won't start World War III. So it's a lot of this, trying to find the line. Although Trump's talk of, painting Chinese flags on the planes and sending them over was a bit.
I know.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. Considering they use completely different planes.
It's stunning to me that they still let him talk. I mean, even you would think that this would be the opportune time to go, all right, we don't need him to fucking say anything right now. And
if that was a first year student, they'd be yelled at. Like if that were any of my even the junior interns at the show, or even junior interns at think tanks, if they said that, would be get like you're going to be doing paper shredding duty for the next 2 weeks. Like, I just don't. What are you saying?
You know what you did.
You know what you did.
Yeah.
Sit in the corner and think about look at all these Chinese planes and think about it for 2 weeks, and then come back to me.
How I mean, I know that's part of the game and everything too, but how genuinely unhinged do you think Putin is at the point where, like, do you think he's really eager to start a nuclear war, or do you think, it's part of the propaganda where it's like he's out of his fucking mind, he's losing it, we don't know what's going on, you know what I mean? Like,
So I don't think he's fully crazy. He's been very isolated for a long time now. So he's been, he doesn't use the internet, which is weird to me, but whatever.
Yeah.
He's been alone for a long time. He's been holed up in his dacha and with lots and lots of books, particularly historical books. And we know he went on a big, long trip with Shoigu, who's the defense minister, a little while ago to Siberia. Mm-hmm. And Shoigu is a very big proponent of Peter the Great's history. So we know they probably talked about Peter the Great the whole time.
Right.
Effectively, Putin has been starting to tell people he doesn't want to be a page in history. He wants to be a chapter in history. He wants to be on the same kind of level as your Peter the Greats, your Catherine the Greats, your Stalins and your Lenins. Mm-hmm. Even though Putin hates Lenin, it's a whole thing.
Right.
Effectively, the way that he could do that is re-bringing Ukraine, because that is effectively the crown jewel of the Russian Empire, back into Russia's sphere of influence.
Right.
And again, because Ukraine is moving further and further and further away from Russia and towards the West, because that's where the jobs are. If he could secure this and he could do it, he would be, Putin the Great for the next 100 years for the Russians.
Right.
And there is now, we don't know how true it is, but 2 years ago there was a rumor he had Parkinson's. That kind of floated up a bit, and then it came down, and we don't really know. But there's obviously that thought of, well, if he's thinking legacy now, and he's alone and he's isolated, and he wants to get his, Putin the Great out of this, invading Ukraine is probably the best thing he could do to get that. And if he thinks he may be trying to step out, I mean, we actually saw him looking to step out a little while ago, but obviously he's stayed in the position. So yeah, we don't know if he's, what his mind is doing at the moment, but I don't think he's keen with nuclear war either. I mean, frankly, no one wins on that, and you don't really get Putin the Great if you turn the entire Russian cities into car parks.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, Americans like to dangle the prospect of, I mean, most people I know are like, we could be vaporized, and which, I mean, I understand like what you just said about the escalation of it, but it seems like the narrative is like he wants it, and I can't imagine anybody like. Full on. Somebody said, full on dystopia today. Yes, we're going hardcore directly into the fire. No one's coming out.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hope your day is going well. But no, it is a feeling that I think everybody has here. You know what I mean? Where it's like one of my friends who's a comic was walking around the other day. She's like, yeah, I'm doing laps in the mall right now, and none of these people realize they could be vaporized at any moment. And I was like, whoa, back up. Like, they're 80 anyway. I'm sure they don't give a shit. They've lived. They're done. But yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you were, you know what I mean? I mean, I barely care, and I'm only 37. Not that I care. Trust me. This is going in a weird direction.
Look, it could be worse. I read the Chinese white paper on Australia, and when I read the sort of what they're going to do about Perth, which is my hometown, they're like, it's not worth nuking. I was like, I feel kind of offended now.
Yeah, I know exactly. Where they're like, yeah, you guys are. You'll get some of the blowback, the radiation, and everything else is going to be fine.
I don't even think we're going to get that.
You'll just be the last people left. Like, oh God, is it even worth it? We can't even leave.
No, we opened the borders yesterday. We're finally there. Yay.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Putin thing is obviously, he's isolated. Everybody's picturing this imaging stuff. How much of it do you think is like propaganda, and how much do you think are the Russians with him? You know what I mean? Like, because I hear things that are like Russian people are disgusted. They're not actually with him. But as you just said, he would be a Russian hero if he winds up pulling this off. Do you think that's still the case, or do you think they're like, fuck no, this is horrendous?
A lot of the Russian people are not particularly pleased with this war, but just because of the Western blowback. But with Russian society, you almost have to imagine cutting down a tree and looking at the rings as they go in, and it's this really weird what they've lived through is how they kind of feel. And again, this doesn't include everyone. It's just kind of the general kind of people you meet in these certain age groups. So the young people, let's say 20 and under, will probably be anti-Putin. They are connected with the West. They see how we live in the West, and most of them watch Western TV with terrible Russian overdubs. A lot of them are learning English. They're very educated. All good. You get to the sort of once you get to the 30s, that's when you start to hit the this demographic of Russians who effectively lived through the end of the Soviet Union. And you got to realize how chaotic that was.
Right.
When the World Bank said, okay, when Russia's transitioning from communism to capitalism, we should do this over a space of 9 years. The US went, yeah, it's nice. I'll give you 6 weeks. And it was just a free for all. It was literally everything that wasn't bolted down was stolen. And if it was bolted down, they came back tomorrow with a screwdriver and got it. We're talking plutonium got stolen. Everything got stolen. So it was chaos. And a lot of that group that lived through that will go and give you the, look, Putin's not great. He's a bit of a dictator. I don't really like him that much, but it's not the 90s. And I don't want the 90s again. At least we have stability.
Right.
And you kind of, as much as, we in the West might go, wow, it's ridiculous. If you've lived in a really chaotic country where, you're going to get shot at in the street and you don't know when the power's coming back on, stability kind of seems nice. So it's and then you get the guys who are a bit older than that who are effectively have lived through the peak of the Soviet Union, the sort of mid 80s, who all go, Russia was once the world power. It was, we were toe and toe with the US. We stood, it was Reagan and Gorbachev. It was, the Soviet Union was the big thing. And now, most people joke that Russia is a gas station with nukes.
Yeah,
they are nowhere near it. The GDP is where Australia is, and nobody gives a shit what Australia thinks in world policy. It's I love us, but oh, look. I take that back. Fiji cares what we think. But
do you think that's a bad place to be, though? Or do you think you guys get predominantly left alone? Because I feel like no,
we're just the US lapdog. That's all we are. We just, we'd run into every war those guys are doing. We don't want to. We sent 200 troops to Syria, and I don't even think they unpacked their gear. We're that kind of we're here.
Right.
Do you want us to do it? We're also the only nation of all the bases in Afghanistan that refused to not have a bar. Every other country was like, look, it's a Muslim country. We shouldn't have alcohol. And the Australians said, bugger that. If that gives you an idea about our armed forces capacity. Again, I won't disparage our armed forces. There's fantastic people and work with those guys quite a lot. But yeah, we're a very odd country. But anyway, back to Russia.
Yeah.
So obviously there is still support. There is still support for Putin. He still does, even if the elections were not rigged, he would probably win.
Wow.
But again, there's also no one there that's really, if all the Republicans have a heart attack tomorrow, there's Democrats to step in. Whereas in Russia and Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, and all these kind of, ex-Soviet countries, quite often it's like a central party leadership. And then there's the next down is 3-4% of the vote.
Right.
So the next down from the Russians is, effectively the Communist Party. It's about 20% of the vote.
Okay.
And it's still led by Gennady Zinayev, who was the leader in 1991.
Wow.
So when the nukes do go off, it'll be him and Keith Richards left. That's it.
Go back to that part where you said all the Republicans have a heart attack, because that was a nice moment. I think we can all just dream.
Yeah, I'm not making any comments there, but
no, it's fine. I'll do that. I'll take over that. I think the thing is because look, everybody's trying to look for some kind of peace of mind, even though this shit's insane. And I think not enough is said about no one really wants nuclear war. You know what I mean? Because that's a nice thing to kind of focus on, because I feel like everything from Fox News, which is I don't know, you've watched it. Unfortunately, I think we've all had to endure going through it. If you're only watching that, and from what I'm getting from people in my family who are a little older, is it's upon us. Somebody everybody wants it, we only have a matter of days. And I feel like that's not a great way to live, but it is nice to know that like everybody's really cautious, including the guy who's isolated himself.
Most people are quite cautious, and this is why that the Russians are being careful not to hit where they know that there'll be columns, and they're trying to do what they can.
Do you even think if they did though, like how quickly? I mean, I that's another thing to do. Even if they did, I feel like there would be. I mean, like you said, like Poland would obviously attack that base, and then it would escalate. Like, but do you actually think that they wouldn't kind of have to have that conversation? Like, okay, if we do this, it's all over. Like, do you think they would actually come to that?
It would be a staring match, and again, it's that
fucking wild.
If smart people are at the table, yes, but right now the Polish are going under a big chunk of nationalism at the moment. The Russians will be under a big chunk of nationalism at the moment, and it's. Do you even want to roll the dice on that? If I say, look, you roll this dice, we're only all going to die if I roll a 1. Don't even roll that dice. Like, stop what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah, it's not worth even getting anywhere near it. Again, you can send in lots of NGOs to do that same job. You can send in lots of helpers and volunteers to do that job. As long as they don't have a Polish flag on their arm, we're fine. And that's kind of what everyone's doing at the moment. Just like, no one get officially dead.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you have to like Weekend at Bernie's that situation, just give us the time.
Yes, no one die on that side of the line, because that's a problem. That's effectively a big problem where we're at. One of the other really depressing things about this is, to give you an idea of how Russian unusual doctrine works, is Russia is often regarded as an artillery army that happens to have tanks. And when I remember speaking with hanging out with a Russian officer years ago, his words to me were, well, it's far easier to conquer car parks than it is apartment buildings. Right now, the Russians are kind of fighting with one hand behind their back. So they've only declared, pushed in about 35% of what was across the border.
Right.
And they're hitting precision targets, but they're very quickly running out of precision missiles.
Right.
It's why most of these apartment blocks you see blown up are kind of near, staging facilities, or they're near airfields, or they're near something of value. When we go to see what Russia does when they're that's it, okay, safety catch off, is what they do in Syria, which is they effectively just artillery an entire block until it's just rubble, and then run the tanks over the rubble. And they're trying to hold back at the moment to give the Ukrainians an out and go, look, you know how bad this is going to be if you keep fighting.
Right.
If we keep losing, we move to the car park doctrine, and we start, not losing 300, civilians a day. We start losing 30,000 civilians a day.
Jesus.
Please surrender now, or we move to that. So again, this is not even the bad stage of the war at this point. That's I guess the most depressing thing I can give your listeners for the morning.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. And it's funny because it's all a chess game, right? And Russians are pretty good at chess, so they're looking like 11 moves down.
Again, I as much as I think they are good at chess, I think, they're about 3 moves ahead. But the long game, as we talked about at the very start of this interview, there is no end game here that works. Like, we've sat, I've sat in so many briefings and meetings and debates over the last little while with very, very intelligent people, and we all sitting there going, gaming this out, and every single scenario goes, that's kind of a shit option. I'm like, I know there's no good things on the table, because again, there was a calculation probably misdone somewhere that Ukraine would surrender as soon as the Russians came across the border.
Right.
Yeah.
And at what point do you think, Zelensky obviously has got to go with what his people want, and if his people still want to fight, but at what point do you think he should be like, all right, look, we're losing too, like how do you think he balances that kind of shit out? You know what I mean? Like, everybody still wants to fight, but we are clearly getting our asses kicked. We're losing this thing. Civilians are dying. I have a responsibility. Or do you think Zelensky's going to wind up going full tilt? He's either going to get himself assassinated, or he's going to get himself killed when he gets captured.
See, that's the real terrifying bit at the moment, is obviously the Russians right now are surrounding all these big cities. So Berdyansk, Mariupol, Chernihiv, Kharkiv, Kiev, and effectively Odessa will probably be next on the list. But they're not going into the city, but they're just placing artillery right outside of it and moving for that, surrender, or we start, massacring big batches of Ukrainians.
Sure.
So there will be a point where Zelensky will have to make that call of, well, do I keep fighting, and he'll just start artillerying civilians, or do I surrender? And this is a really, really tough decision. But right now, every day he fights and makes it harder for the Russians, the more likely he is to get a bet. They're having frequent sort of talks between the Ukrainian and Russian defense ministers at the moment. There are talks between all the parties here. He's hoping to put enough of a rough stab into the Russian side that he can get something decent out of a peace talk. That maybe Russia, says, "We'll pull across the border, but you can never join NATO," which they couldn't anyway because of the territorial disputes in the east.
That's what I don't understand. I mean, yeah, you're right. They couldn't join NATO anyway. So what is obviously the peace talks would be like, hey, great, you're not going to bomb our fucking city anymore and nobody's going to have to die needlessly. But for how, peace talk for what? For how long? Like what's the best negotiation he could possibly make in that situation? And one that his people are still going to be like, great, good job. We feel vindicated. And the ones that are still going to want to fight.
Congratulations, you are every defense person I've ever spoken with in the last 3 weeks.
That's how we're wrapping the show up, guys.
Like you think all these smart people, and we still all hit this roadblock of like, well, there's no good options on the table,
right?
And this is where we're at. So effectively, yeah, the only thing we could think that everyone would be happy with is Ukraine vows to never join NATO or the EU, and Russia pulls back across the border, but gets to keep all of Luhansk and Donetsk. And we call it a day there. And even that would probably be fine for the Ukraine. They could save face and walk away from that. But that would mean a lot of Russian deaths for a very little amount of territory gained.
Exactly. And not only that, though, how long before they wind up going, okay, we want the rest of it? Like, that's what I mean. Like, how, like, it's just going to be another one of those things that everyone's going to go, oh, okay, it's just a matter of fucking time. It's a ticking time bomb. When's it going to go back in?
And that's the problem. Do you blunt the Russians now? And even then, the Russians are also at this point right now of the US has not said that they'll take the sanctions off if the Russians leave. They've just said you're under sanctions. So right now the Russians are going, well, we've already taken the worst we can possibly get. Why not just push right through Ukraine and possibly even into Moldova?
Yeah.
You've already done the worst thing you can do to us.
Sure. And I'll tell you right now, those sanctions, man, there's people, I think we're very close to just going back to horses because the gas price, you know what I mean? Like Americans are not, I don't know if you've heard, not too happy about the gas prices and shit, but we're not exactly eager to,
The crazy bit is that was already baked into the cake before all of this. Effectively, gas prices are a macroeconomic trend. So a lot of these OPEC nations decided how much gas they're going to make this year, and they would have decided that about a year ago.
Okay.
That's how many plants they bring online, so many people they bring online, and we actually came out of the pandemic a lot better than OPEC thought we would. So there was already a shortage in the market, and they went, well, there's a shortage, petrol prices up a little bit, not too much of a problem. And then we had all of the Ukraine-Russia stuff kick off and went, oh, shit. And that's kind of just like, we're just throwing petrol on a fire now. Actually, no, we're not, because we can't afford the petrol.
We can't afford it.
But effectively, as much as people blame, that's the thing. I've seen the stickers on even Australian petrol pumps go, with the Biden, I did this on the petrol pump.
Yeah, it's
like,
all over.
Every macroeconomics professor right now is just pulling their hair out going, no, that's not how this works at all.
Right.
So it's
they get those bumper stickers out fucking fast. Like in my, in my shore trash area where it's just like, whatever, I'm driving around. I see it it's Biden's fault, gas price. I'm like, where are they getting them?
It's everywhere, by the way. Everywhere. I was in Arizona. I saw it. I was everywhere.
Yeah. They're mass producing that shit.
Yeah, because it's great advertising. Because again, it's one thing Americans really do, understand. If I was to sit with average people and go, well, the macroeconomic trends will suggest that the petrol price is probably going to rise by about 12% due to the shortage in the market, and this is probably going to be a Q4 problem. Who gives a shit? I'm bored myself just listening to that. It's literally just me and 4 other cardigan idiots that listen to that kind of stuff. Petrol prices is what people understand,
right? Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be a rough one for a while. But this is effectively a lot of countries are moving to gas. There's been a lot of shortage in certain bits of the market. There's been other players who had to pull out. But yeah, so oil prices, it's made worse by the conflict, but it's not the full cause of it.
Right. Are you optimistic about anything in particular? Obviously not. I'm not even putting that on you. You just summed up
my entire coat of arms. Are you optimistic about anything?
This as a general whole, though. It's not that you're not, but is it?
Are you my fiance?
Yes. In this case, we are married until this show ends. So, or we're close to being anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be, I think, but is there any? Do you have any kind of hope?
There is some hope out of this. So, for the Americans right now, under the Trump administration, we were talking about disbanding NATO. Trump was trying to push for that.
Right.
There was, even before this, NATO couldn't even agree on what paperclips they want to use. Right. You couldn't get the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Italians, or anyone to agree on anything. And a lot of people were starting to have all the sort of academics were having these, is NATO still required kind of talks. Right. It's coming up, and it's there is that talk. Now there is so much support for NATO. It is Europe is now unified. We now have everyone on the same page. Even Hungary's saying the right things, and Hungary never say the right things. Sorry, I just annoyed everyone in Budapest there. There's an election coming up. Please do the right thing. Anyway, moving on. So effectively, we're in a position where this is the most unified the West is going to be for a while. Right. For the foreign policy guys anyway, not for everything else. Just wildly and everything else is cooked, but NATO's fine. The EU effectively this may actually bring some good energy policy out of this, because right now they're either stuck in either going, if you're Germany and you've just lost a whole bunch of natural gas coming in and you still want to hit any of your targets, you either have to really ramp up your renewables to hit those targets, or you got to go back to coal and just say, bugger it, we're never going to hit it. And most countries seem to be going, okay, well, we might as well ramp up the renewable programs. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very expensive and difficult, but let's go for it. And I think that is a good thing for Europe, trying to get into energy independent of those guys, because Russia's had a hold on Europe for a very long time because of energy, because they can just switch the gas pipes off at any time. Because of this, a lot of Europe is actually going to start to really operate themselves. And if Europe is independent of what Russia thinks, and they can actually do what they want, and they're not, at the beck and call of Moscow, probably a good thing for Europe. So
nice.
Look at this, it's like, a whole plate of rotten food, but there's a great cherry tomato in the middle.
Right. That's a great way to look.
Just maybe, Putin's end game is clean energy across the world, and he's just the pieces.
He's the Iron Man.
Putin's end game was to ruin my week. That's all it is. Which is funny, because I've been joking about this with my partner. I said, because I get like one day off every 2 months at most. I'm working all the time, and I had a day off booked in August last year, and that day that I booked off was the day that Afghanistan fell, and I went, okay, whatever, fine. And then the next day I had off was the day Kazakhstan kicked off.
Oh my God.
So I'm now half assuming that it's like, I should never have a day off.
Right.
I'm starting to get every time I have a couple of hours off, I start feeling nervous for Paraguay. It's just getting to that point now.
Just don't ever plan for it. That way they can't decide when to. Yeah. Just take a random day off.
I can never take holidays. That's what we've learned from this experience.
I was gonna say that like last time we talked to you, and then this fucking shit happened. So now I'm just gonna mark. I'm like, is he off this day? Because I'm not gonna go on vacation then. Because so I'm gonna. It's like when when an earthquake's happening, when all the animals flee the woods. I'm like, what is Michael Hilliard doing? Is he?
Because a lot of people book their trips like, oh, I'm thinking about going here. Have you been there? I'm like, yeah, I've been there. It's lovely. He's like, I'm not going there. If he's been there, it's not a good place. So just leave that one alone. But yeah, we may see some good stuff out of this. We may see people sort of start to go energy independent on a few things. That's great, but it's a rough road ahead for a few months at least.
That's not bad news. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's a rough road ahead, but it's not bad. I mean, I feel like it's one of those things that not everybody talks about, because why do it? There's no benefit to talking about that kind of shit, because the focus is obviously on the worst part of everything, because that's what gets the clicks and stuff like that. But that was nice. When I asked for hope, I wasn't expecting that. I thought you were gonna be like, no.
Absolutely
not.
Well.
Yeah.
So I got a question. What do you think NATO's responsibility is here too? Because it gets really sticky. Nobody wants to dance in this. But
NATO's responsibility is to protect NATO partners, and that's unfortunately as rough as it is. And right now, NATO's having a lot of talks about Moldova, because that's the next one. We're all going to hear a lot about Transnistria very soon, which I've spent a bit of time there. It's a lovely place. I'm going to say that politely. Hopefully I don't have to go back anytime
whole
soon.
Sentence is the first time anyone's uttered anything like that. So
Yeah,
that's nice. On the show.
So yeah, NATO has to protect NATO partners, and right now, a lot of countries will be beefing up the defense, because right now, if you're Montenegro and you go, well, okay, I'm spending 1% of my GDP on defense, and you go, well, NATO is asking me to spend 2%, but what good is one extra plane going to do against Russia? Yeah,
Right.
who cares? Right now, we're seeing a lot of countries actually rearming and getting themselves and rebuilding up military forces. Germany in particular, Germany has always been pretty much disarmed and fighting economic wars since World War II.
Right.
They kind of have a hangover from that whole thing.
I was going to say, I think they went through something.
Again, we don't talk about the war. Yeah. So, but the fact that Germany's rearming is insane. Like, that's in the space of a week, we're now having conversations. Is Kazakhstan on the chopping block? Finland and Sweden are now looking to join NATO. Moldova is having talks in the EU. We're now having Germany rearm. This is like a month ago would you've been called crazy.
Right.
So this has been a huge paradigm shift in Europe. Even the concept of a European army is now back on the table. These are all things that are ballistically nuts. We're seeing a lot of these far-right populists like Marine Le Pen in France, who effectively were pretty good political contenders and have been shaking Putin's hand for months and have been Putin. And then Putin went into Ukraine, and now they go, oh, shit, okay, we should get rid of all the flyers with us on them, and then realize that every single flyer has the two of them together. Yeah. So we are probably going to see a bit of right-wing populism take a big shrink. This is a unifying force for a lot of the European community. So we are going to see Slovakia and Czechia and Romania and Bulgaria start to look at each other and go, look, I don't like you that much, but I really don't like that guy, which is good. I think the more integrated Europe can be, the better it is for the European community. So there are some rays of sunshine out of this absolute terrible situation.
Yeah. I wish I could say the same for the US, man, but I feel like there's still some confusion on the Republican side. Like, they're not used to seeing a people defend its capital. They're like, what is going on there? What are you doing with the capital? How did that? Because I'm not sure we're supposed to be doing that. It's weird. I mean, I wish the US was doing, I could say we were unified. I feel like we are, but then you watch the news and you're like, there's people genuinely confused.
I think there's always a bit of a bell curve with it. And, from working in radio and television over the years, if you interview 100 people on the street about any issue, whether it be, the abortion's the big one, but you interview 100 people, most people are going to just give you they have a kind of middle of the road opinion, but you don't put that on TV. It's not interesting. You get the every abortion causes Iran to gain 400 missiles. And you get the person who's like, I've had 12 and I'm going for another 12. Those are the people you put on TV because they make the most interesting television.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's kind of what a lot of US media does.
Do you think that Putin relies on that? Sorry.
Very much so. Very much so.
Right.
The Russian government has put a lot of money and megaphone help into, like we watched, one of my staff works for Twitter. She works in the disinformation unit, so she gets to see all this in real time.
Good Lord.
And we watched a lot of this, Australian patriots unite, that kind of nonsense, just drop off the moment Russian Twitter stopped.
Wow.
We're watching a lot of the American sort of, and they do both sides. We've seen, because the Russians aren't particularly good at what they do, like we'll know an IP address is putting in misinformation out, and then they'll check into the Starbucks across from the GRU's headquarters. I'm like, what are you doing? This is brought to you by NordVPN. Anyway, moving on. Ukrainian war brought to you by Raid, Shadow Legends.
That's so great.
Moving.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been wild at the amount of megaphoning and everything that the Russians do in the American sphere.
Right. So I'm going to ask some personal questions, by the way, because I feel like you're on the show.
Look, we're married. Of course. It's what we do.
Exactly. I should probably know before we elope. Favorite color? No. So what, when you started the Red Line podcast, I mean, how long ago was that?
That'd be two and a bit years ago now.
Okay. Did you really did you think it was going to get as big as it's gotten, as attention grabbing? Did you do it
Nowhere
because
near.
right?
No. Like we just had a month of 2.8 million streams last month, which is
congratulations, by the way. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, which is, again, I have no idea why. It's I guess we're the Ukraine guys that everyone went, oh, look, those guys. It's been crazy. I expected this show to literally just be, a outlet just for me to yell into a mic and not have to annoy my lovely fiance with, did you see what happened in Turkmenistan this week? She doesn't care. Not at all. But yeah, fortunately, we've got a very good team. We've got a team of 15 on the show now,
Nice.
who are all working crazy hours and pulling together stories and everything else. So yeah, we've been very lucky to have all great guests and good shows, and go after topics and have the sort of freedom from our supporters to be able to go and talk about. We just did an episode on Bougainville, to which who the hell's thought about Bougainville?
Right.
Yeah.
And how much? I mean, would you say obviously that kind of attention, that many streams, stuff like that, you get the good with the bad. You know what I mean? Do you have people that are focused on dealing with that kind of shit, responding? Because you were talking about in the backstage a little bit, maybe responding to certain comments. You don't often do that kind of stuff, but how do you kind of navigate that at this point with the popularity of the podcast and everything that's going on in the world?
So I still tend to actually answer almost every email that gets sent through to me.
Holy shit!
I know I get my email gets absolutely slaughtered, and I usually take about unless they're crazy, and if they're like a death threat, it's like, you come to Armenia and I kill you. I'm like,
you're right.
I'm just not going to come to Armenia.
Yeah, you're like, don't tell me where you're going to kill me. I just want to show up.
I come to Australia. I'm like, if you can get in here, you deserve to kill me. Come on in.
Yeah,
our visas are ridiculous.
It's like when you were in school and somebody used to be like, 5 o'clock, the park, be there. I'm beating your ass. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go to the park at 5 o'clock. Like, why would you tell me the time and place?
Yeah, and that's half the time. My producer always laugh because if sometimes I'll just send back thank you so much. If you could send me some sources to read, I'd love to have a look at them, because they never respond to that if you're polite. Or you get back this read Mein Kampf, it's great. I'm like, oh shit, no. But most of the time, I generally have a rule: if someone's taken the time to write to the show, I'll take time to write to them. It may be 2 weeks after they've got to me,
sure.
And I'll just take an afternoon and literally sit there and just bang out 160 thank you so much. Yes, I do think that Russia is bad too. Please see the following articles we put together on this. The fun one is, we know when there's an Australian university where they obviously listen to the show a fair chunk, because whenever their international relations course releases a new assignment, we tend to get with lots of, hey, what are your thoughts on this particular issue? And they're all coming in from student emails about the same time. And you go,
nice.
Okay,
that's hilarious.
I know what you're doing.
Yeah. And you're like, and I'm happy to oblige for a fee.
The Patreon link is the following.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Smart. We got to get on that train. That'd be nice.
Doing high school kids' assignments is not the train I thought I would be on.
As long as the money's coming in, man, you could fund that whole wedding you got coming up. It'd be nice.
Again, I'm doing a wedding in Georgia. It's it's not an expensive wedding.
Right. The country.
Atlanta's pretty cheap.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you see all those tweets the other day, because Georgia obviously put an application in to join the EU. So everyone's going, how can Georgia join the EU? Why can't Florida? I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, fuck.
That says a lot for Florida.
Yeah, what's the turnover? Do you think there's a turnover though, for people who may have been on the fence about an issue, and then they're writing to you like, "Fuck, you totally changed." Do you pay attention to that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and obviously those messages are always really nice,
right?
And there are people who will go, "Yep, this is really great." We get professors who have studied it for 40 years say, "Yep, that was a really great piece. You've nailed this and this and this." Obviously, you get the occasional person say, "I don't agree with with this particular thing." I fact checked 4. I had one email that came through the other day. It's like, I fact checked 4 of your interviews and went through every single line, and you mispronounced this word here at minute 48. I'm like, all right. Oh, I'll quit.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guy.
So yeah, it's water off a duck's back to me. Again, I spent my career as a conflict journalist getting shot at. So you sending to me that, I'm a Kyrgyz spy isn't really going to perturb me that far.
Right. That brings me to my next question. Conflict journalist getting shot at. Did you ever, what's the closest you probably felt like, fuck, I'm not going to get out of this?
Two would come to mind that were really a bit hair raising. That were, there were lots of hair raising moments, but one of them was when we were in Kyrgyzstan and I had, taken the day off like an idiot and decided to go ride some horses through the national park. And was like, oh, yeah, this is good. And then I rode past these old Russian army trucks, which is not that unusual. I was like,
right.
Yeah. And then I rode into this valley and then it hits sort of 12 o'clock. And I hear just in the distance, I'm like, sounds like an artillery shell. And then right next to us, because we've ridden into the old, into where they were doing big exercises. And I'm sitting on this tiny little Kyrgyz horse in -30 going, oh shit. And now it was myself and the sort of the little Kyrgyz man I was with. He doesn't speak any English, but he said the F word really, really well. So we're just like escaping on these horses out of here. We eventually got back to the bar and I just bought him whatever bottle of vodka he wanted. And we sat there and just drank until my driver found us again.
Holy shit.
The other one, we went to Transnistria, which is this breakaway Soviet republic in Moldova, which you're going to hear a lot about coming up. Effectively, we went in there to sort of see if we could buy a nuclear weapon. That was what we were there for.
Okay.
And we got over the border and got past the Russian peacekeepers, and then they went into this. It's like there's bullet holes in everything. There's a picture of Lenin across the bed. It's a weird place. To give you a bit of an idea on what it's like, I asked a local there, I was like, why are the plants all made of plastic? He goes, so you can't get the microphone wet, yes? Oh shit. All right.
Fuck.
So we got to our apartment and they're like, oh, we haven't seen a tourist in 6 months. You got the place to yourself. I'm like, yep, fine. And then 3 hours later, this little kind of Russian guy comes in and just happens to book on the same day as us. I went, okay, he's there watching us, whatever, that's fine. So we did the standard thing of just getting him really drunk. You do the standard thing. You ask him a bunch of questions. You keep that in the back of your mind. You get him really drunk and you ask the same lot of questions and see how it lines up. Anyway, so we did the story. We got in there and did what we needed to do. And then I got a call from one of my contacts in the government there and went, you need to go. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, they're about to arrest you at midday. You need to get out of the country like now. And I went, okay.
Holy shit.
Can we get? He's like, okay, we have an arms dealer who can probably smuggle you out, but you'll have to go in the boot of a car. I went, whatever it takes, just get me across the border. I don't want to go to a Transnistrian prison.
Right.
Now, the worst bit is I brought my fiance on this trip with me like an idiot. I speak Russian. She doesn't. Right. So I had to then look at her and go, sweetie, so we're going to go to Moldova a couple days early. And she goes, oh, why? I'm like, I'll tell you when we get over the border. And the car pulls up, and I've had to make like last minute payphone calls to just make sure the border is going to get us across. And we're sitting there holding a couple of bottles of cognac and some cigarettes, because that's good currency to sneak across borders.
Sure.
We're sitting in the boot, and the guy pulls up, the boot opens up, and she looks at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, you need to get in the boot. I'm super sorry about this. I'll explain when we get to Moldova.
Oh my God.
And then we had to get in the shitty old car, and we got snuck over the border. So yeah, I don't know if I'm ever allowed back because I have a visa coming in, but I do not have a visa going out.
Oh my God, man, that's fucking insane. And you guys are still engaged, so that's pretty nice.
We are still engaged. That poor woman. Again, it's a fantastic story to tell at bars, but good God, it was terrifying at the time. Mostly because I knew that if we got sent to prison, my mother-in-law would kill me.
Oh yeah,
because again, she asked what Moldova was like, and I didn't tell her we were going to Transnistria, and I was warned specifically by the Australian government not to go to Transnistria.
Oh my God.
They said, we will not come for you. I went, oh good, I'm going to go anyway. What could possibly go wrong?
Right. Yeah, and you didn't plan. See, that's before you knew that taking off was like a detriment to your life, society, the world.
Yeah, so that was fun. So yeah, it was. And the worst bit is I told this story on another show, and I didn't tell my parents any of this. Obviously, I don't tell my parents when I'm in shot at. I don't tell my parents to keep that all quiet. And I got a call from my mum about a year and a half ago. She's like, Michael, I'm like, what's going on? I haven't heard from you for a while. I just watched you on this program, and you went to Transnistria. What is going on? I'm like, oh shit. So I copped it when I got back too, which was lovely.
Oh, that's fucking hilarious. What were you gonna say, Tom?
Oh, I was gonna say I wanted to see the twist ending be like he pulls back that curtain and he's got a nuclear device right behind him.
We need a War Dog style movie, but with you and your fiance and your buddy, whoever you went out there with the other last time.
Yeah, I don't want to mention his name because he's very busy at the moment. But
gotcha.
yeah, it's it was a very interesting time. There's been a few places where my fiance has come on a few trips with me now, and this poor woman, when we started dating, I was still a conflict journalist, full time doing that, and I remember her being like, "Oh, come on assignment with you." I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to Belarus." She's like, "Oh, sounds nice." I'm like, "Is it like Paris?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's like Paris." Just a filthy person.
That's great.
And then I sent it, and then I took her to Ukraine straight after that.
Oh my God.
Wow. She's got to be like, can't we just go to the Bahamas?
Yeah. Again, she grew up in this like quaint little English village, and is like, when we got to Ukraine, and when we got to Ukraine, I remember we got to one of our accommodation, and they handed us, like, she's never been in any of these kind of nonsense places, and they hand us these 2 army helmets. And I'm sitting there going, shit. And then she goes, "Oh, what are these for?" And the guy goes, "Is just in case." And she's like, "Oh." Again, that poor woman. I 2 days after that, I was like, "Yeah, I got approval from the army. We're going to Chernobyl tomorrow." She's like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
So what country are you guys getting married in?
Georgia.
No. That's nice.
Which it's funny because Georgia's just over the border from Chechnya, which is one of the most dangerous bits of Russia, or was one of the most dangerous bits of Russia. And I spoke to a friend of mine about the bachelor party, and he goes, "Let me sort something out for you." And we talk. He's like, "We can go to Chechnya for the bachelor party." Obviously, we don't know now because Russia's doing its thing.
Right.
But I remember that he put me on this guy. He's like, "Yes, you come to Chechnya and we do bachelor party. I'd give you tank. You drive tank and blow up car or something." Right?
Wow,
That sounds fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really in for that. And he goes, "Is no problem. We do not breathalyze. No problem." Like,
wow.
"Can I marry you?"
Yeah. That's fucking hilarious.
She's talking about like, "Oh, I'm gonna have a crochet party before we leave," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna blow up the vehicle."
And there might be Chechens in it.
Yeah.
I told him, my producer, this because I was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go do this." He's like, "Don't drive over the border. I know it's great for ratings and it starts a war, but don't drive it over the border."
It starts a war. Oh fuck. Oh, dude. Well, listen, man, it's been a blast having you on. I got to ask you the big 3 questions that we ask every guest. So I'm sure you'll knock them out of the park. First one, if you can go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself to help you out today?
Buy travel insurance, you idiot.
Stop taking days off.
Yeah, don't take days off. Buy travel insurance, and for the love of God, learn Russian better and learn to speak it without a dumb accent. I think that's probably the big things I'd tell my younger self.
I thought you were killing it.
Okay, my Russian is fine when I'm sober. It's like but once I get drunk, it gets to "Era muzna kupit vodka pajalasta," and it just ends up in this, really rough Australian accent.
Wow.
Which it just stands out like a sore thumb because it raises way more questions than it should. Yeah, so I definitely yell at myself about that.
Okay, that's great. Second question: what had to end in your life, good or bad, in order for you to wind up where you are today?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. I used to be in a touring rock band for years, and I was a full-time.
Nice.
I was playing. I was, look, I'm a chubby white guy. Of course, I'm a bass player. It just comes with the territory. When they hand me a cardigan and a bass, and they say, "Good luck, kiddo." And I did that for years, and I enjoyed it. We played festivals, and I did the touring circuits, and did that. But when I was starting to get, I was doing all these shows, but getting offers to do conflict journalism, and I kind of couldn't do, one. I couldn't do both, and it was that decision of, do I keep doing the running around Australia again and again and again and again, just playing shows, or do I stop that and kind of start doing long deployments over over and doing conflict journalism. And then I realized I'm becoming a chubby white guy who looks like a dad. The music thing is probably not going to work for me forever.
Have you seen the band Blues Traveler? I'm not sure you're correct in that.
They also have talent. That's the difference.
And harmonicas.
They do.
The harmonica. That's crazy, man. That's awesome though. You got to see. That's nice that you got to do a little bit of both.
Like it was good. It's definitely, when my kid, my child will be like, oh, Dad, you never did anything cool. And be like, oh, sit down. The following are war crimes, actually.
But do you feel like that's been satisfied? The need to play.
I still have some dumb young nonsense in me. I know I just signed a contract to go out to Anthrax Island probably at the end of this year, so where it's
Very
fantastic.
nice.
Almost no one's been there. It'll be a great story, but I've also got told that if the hazmat suit goes, I've got about 20 minutes to live, and the nearest hospital is about 500 k's away, which is great. Again, it'll make a great story if I live through it.
You got to come back and talk to us about that, because when is that?
That'll probably be the end of the year. So we're sorting out.
I just want to plan anything around that time, just for your track record.
But then again, if the Uzbek government is listening, I'm not going there. I'm just going to check out the desert. So just ignore me.
So then our last question is my favorite question, because it ties into the show. If this was a genuine dystopia, fucking comet heading toward Earth, alien zombies, fire. Well, there's fire everywhere now, but that kind of shit going on. What would be your epic death? How would you want to go out?
Projecting, brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, across the comet as it runs towards us would just feel like the best late stage capitalism we could do here.
All right.
We cut to see, and just cut to Applebee's, $4 chicken licking fingers in between, nuclear blasts. I'm all for that. Go for it.
That's great.
No, I think if I was gonna go out, I'd probably just go on air and just announce the following people have committed war crimes and just list them all off. Just be like, I have witnessed the following things.
Wow.
That seems like the way to go. Do the whole, that Simpsons bit where Kent Brockman's like, the following people are gay.
Yeah.
Just but with war crimes. Perfect.
That's fucking great, man. Dude, it's been a blast talking to you. I feel like every time I do get to talk to you, this is twice now, but I mean, I feel like I just learn a lot. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing with us.
It was an absolute pleasure. Anytime. I'm sure when the conflict gets even worse and we start invading Moldova, because I took a day off, I'll come right back and we can chat about that too.
Thank you so much, dude.
Thanks, man. Have a great one.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Peace.
Dystopia tonight.